Welcome to All the Things. I am Monique Dusan.
And I'm Krista Bontrager, also known as Theology Mom, and I'm back!
Yes, we are back on the show where we talk about all the things related to God, the Bible, and real life. Welcome back, friend.
I'm here. We're live, and I'm seeing that. I'm like out of practice with fixing my hair for camera there. All right, there we go.
Well, there you go.
Want to thank our moderators, Laura Hartley and Elaine Voss, are there in the stream today. Glad to have you guys there. And we are live, and we would encourage you to join us in the chat for this live discussion. This is a show I've been wanting to do for quite a long time, so I am pumped to be talking about this. But we do want to encourage you to stay tuned for two very important announcements during the show later on.
Yes. So what are we talking about tonight? Tonight, we are talking about racialized poverty. Is poverty really racialized? What does it mean for poverty to be racialized? We are calling the show The Myth of Racialized Poverty, which kind of gives you some insight as to what we think about racialized poverty. But we have two awesome guests here with us tonight. We're going to have Kevin.
So by racialized poverty, what do you mean by that?
Well, I'm going to define it. We're going to define it in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do I know?
We're going to define it. We are really going to do it.
Who knows?
But Kevin Briggins is with us. Kevin is my co-host on Off Code. He is also known as the second thorn in my side.
Who's the first? Oh, is that your mother? I don't know what we're talking about.
This one. I mean, it's so bad, people. We were at a conference in South Carolina, and somebody walked up to us and were like, "You need to leave Monique alone." I said, "Yes, look at God sending people to my defense."
Oh, brother.
Yes. Yeah. And then we also have on as our second guest, the one and only Pastor Alton Hardy. Pastor Alton is a pastor down in Birmingham, specifically in an area called Fairfield. And the message that he has, the heart that he has for his people, we were just discussing some things, just the four of us, and his heart is much better than mine. Okay. If nothing else was revealed, his heart is better than mine. But then there's that. But he's doing work in a lower socioeconomic area and really working with humans to understand, what does it mean actually to be a human? What does it mean to work? What does it mean to get married, to have children, to stay married? Not just like, come, we got married so we can, do things and now I'm gonna leave. What does it mean to actually develop a community and walk alongside people? We love Pastor Alton.
So he's working with real people.
He's working with real people.
Not just a theory.
Not just a theory.
Okay.
It's not. He's actually put boots on the ground. They've opened up a grocery store. He's just doing it. And I actually love it. Kevin and I had him on Off Code a couple of years ago now. And now we actually get to have him on All the Things. I've invited him back to Off Code, but he ain't said yes. So I don't know. Kevin probably offended him. Y'all need to pray. Pray for Kevin. All right. And so with that, let's bring the guys on and talk about this idea of racialized poverty. Before we get started, everybody knows who Kevin is, but Pastor Alton.
So Kevin doesn't get an
No,
introduction.
he don't get an introduction. That's Kevin. Kevin, that's them. Okay, that's all you get. Tell us about yourself and like the work that you're doing down in Fairfield.
Well, I am a pastor, first and foremost. That's what I am. I love God's church. I love God's people. I've been married for almost 30 years to my wife, my sweetheart, my love of my life, outside of Jesus, Sandra. And we have 5 kids between us. And we've been in Fairfield, outside of Birmingham for now almost 13 years. And I have just been, I'm just decided that basically I'm just going to trust the gospel in this urban inner city work. And I was going to just trust the Lord on that. I was not going to try any more gimmicks, any more quick fixes to what was happening in the urban poor Black community. And now I'm 13 years into it. God has just shown himself to be faithful. So that's pretty much what I have been up to for the last 13 years. And I say 13 years, saying that in Birmingham, I've been doing urban work for over 30 years, but the 13 years here in Birmingham has been almost a dedicated work just on nothing more but the gospel and nothing else.
Mm-hmm. And the impact that you're making it's awesome. Like I remember the first time that we came down there and you were like, well, we're going to build this, we're going to do that. And
It was
now
mostly just dilapidated buildings.
it was we were like, okay, we'll see what happens. And having gone back just last month, was it?
It was in May when I graduated, when he took us on the tour.
Oh yeah, I was thinking it was the last trip to Birmingham, but no, in May, just seeing it. I went shopping at your store. It's absolutely
not my
awesome.
store.
It is absolutely awesome, and I feel like we could do and maybe we should. We could do an entire program, all the things just on your vision and your vision for men and for family and for community and what all that looks like to actually lay out a blueprint. I see a book. I'm not prophetic, but if I was, I definitely could see a book and a manual, a blueprint on how to do this because you're really doing it well. So back to Krista's question on racialized poverty, I wrote out a definition just so I wouldn't really kind of get thrown by it. But when we're talking about racialized poverty, the way that we're defining it here on the show is the idea that poverty is primarily explained by race or racism rather than by broader personal, social, cultural, or economic factors that affect people of all backgrounds. And so when we look at stats regarding poverty, Blacks and Hispanics lead that statistical chart. And then it would be Asians and then it would be whites. And many people would say, well, because Blacks are the leading group or leading that poverty scale, that is a sign that racism is at play. We're definitely leading that scale, not because Pookie and Jerome decided that they were gonna, go do these nefarious things over here, or not because, Shantae and them didn't decide to work. It's simply because they're Black. And so before we dig deep into the conversation, I would love to hear from all of you on your thoughts on racialized poverty. Are you seeing poverty as something that is strictly based on race? How do personal factors fall into that?
From my vantage point and what I've seen and just in my own personal life, poverty, especially here in the Western context in America, has nothing to do with race, has nothing to do with the color of your skin. A lot of it has a lot to do with our decisions that we are making, whether we choose to work or not to work, or to go against what I call the blueprints for prosperity and peace within your own life, within your own community, and within your own family. If you as a guy, just take this, you have a guy, you have, let's say 5 children by 5 different women, you're going to be poor. You're not going to have a lot of money. And I get what people are always and have been, those on the other side of the aisle, the spectrum, on the left, or whatever you want to call it, they're always trying to link African-American poverty that's happening within our inner cities as it relates to their slavery, some Jim Crow, and other pathologies that happened way in the past. That is not true. And this is a real true story. I had to work myself out of that. I think if you're just an African-American, if you're not especially thinking hard about this stuff, you just come into the room automatically thinking, when you see this poverty playing itself out in our inner cities, that it is automatically linked to slavery, Jim Crow, or the bad character of white people of some sort. That's not true at all. And that was what God really took a long time in working out of me in a personal way, because going back to what you guys said about what God is doing with me now in the last 13 years, God had to get me to a gospel perspective on these matters about people who look like me. And because if he would have sent me maybe 20 years before, I would have brought to Fairfield, well, the reason that Black people are poor is because white people got privilege. I have no scripture for it, but I would echo stuff like that because somebody told me. I read it in a sociology book. And so I was echoing a lot of that, what you call that anti-racism rhetoric. not even realizing what I was echoing was not even in the Bible. I was
Yeah.
just echoing it. I hadn't took that and took it to the book of Romans and compared them both together and said, which one is of God and which one is not. I just took it, ran with it. And maybe because, to totally be honest with you, I was still working through my own gospel as it relates to blaming other people for my condition and the condition of people who look like me, in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kevin. Sorry.
Yeah.
Krista, one of y'all.
Yeah, I
I
was
knew
just gonna
somebody
say
was going to say something.
that. Yeah, I mean, there's always this desire to tie poverty to being black, but the reality is the vast majority of black people in America are not poor. You know,
Yes.
I believe the poverty rate is around 17%. Right, so that means
That's correct.
Yeah.
I just looked it up
Yeah, so
based
that
on the
means
census data from
2023.
2023. It's about
Yeah, so-
17.9%.
yeah, so that means 83% of black people are not poor, but this is what they do because of the concentration of black people tend to be in poor inner cities. So, right, the vast majority of black people don't live in what we call the black community. We're
Mhm.
spread out amongst, rural and suburban and all these other areas where we're minorities in these communities. But where blacks congregate is in the poor inner city, right? And so that gets to be the picture of the black community, or what it means to be black, when that's not a representation of black people in America, but it becomes the stereotype. And there are many reasons that's the case. People do it because honestly, they benefit off of it. It is a narrative that a lot of people like to use to benefit themselves and to get policies and all types of let's just call it privileges, based on this guilt that white people owe black people something. Oh, look at the poverty, right? This is historic injustice. Y'all still need to make this right. Give us this grant. Give us this money, right? Give me this position. And so yeah, it gets exploited, and then we make these excuses. And the reason that even that 17% is what it is what Alton was saying. It has nothing to do with historical injustices. That's not why
Not
people
at
are
all.
poor today. They're
Nope.
poor today because of culture, right? Because he talked about the decisions we make. Well, our decisions are driven by our culture. Culture being defined as our values, our beliefs, and our practices, right? And so when you look at the poor black community, you look at what they value, what they believe, and what they practice. They don't practice the things that lead to success,
Nope.
material success, right? And so, yeah, this idea that poverty is racial, and they throw out all these statistics between blacks and whites, and they try to paint this narrative that just isn't a true depiction of what it means to be black in America.
And I want to chime in on that because when you connect the money to why this racialized poverty is so connected to black people, and I see this all the time where I live here in Birmingham, there is a lot of money in the nonprofit entities to address this so-called poverty that's in this 17%. And
Yep.
I'm telling you guys, that's the biggest elephant in the room. And so, I mean, when Paul says the love of money is the root of all evil, he wasn't joking when he wrote that. And when you get money connected to stuff, I mean, there's a lot of money and people who want to keep that narrative going because that's how they make their livelihood.
Yes.
I want to offer a few more statistics just to really round out like what we're saying here. I like the term desegregating poverty, of like, hey, we can talk about poverty. We can talk about biblical principles for uplift out of poverty, but let's have that discussion across all communities. And, 17.9% of the African American community, it's according to the census, the 2023 census is in poverty, but Hispanics is 15.7. American Indians and Alaska natives are even higher than the African American community. It's 18.9. Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders is right in there with African Americans at 17.6. So all four of those groups are kind of clustering really closely together. Asians, and by Asians that would include Southeast Asians of Indians, is only about 10%. It's a bit lower, and whites are at about 7%, 7.7. And so, I think the impact is poverty impacts many communities. But what you're saying, Alton, is that the money tends to be diverted in a heavy way, particularly toward the African American community, because of what is seen as the historical injustices. Is that a fair summary of what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I mean, and good or bad or indifferent, the black and white narrative is a money raiser.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why people, well-to-do blacks, when they give talks on the subjects of the poor black, they always use the statistics of the poor urban inner city blacks to galvanize bringing white shame, white guilt on white people, because they're not telling the story that 83% of blacks are not in poverty. They can't raise no money on that. So, it comes down to money at the end of the day. So they live in 5-star hotels. I've seen this play out in my own denomination. I see this stuff play out. People living well, 2-star car garages, living in 5-star hotels. But when they give the message of Sharika. I mean, I'm not trying to be stereotypical here, but
Sharika do belong to us.
They're giving all that stuff, and they don't even hang out with those people.
Because ain't nobody about to go to the hood.
They don't know any Bloods and Crips, but they're going to use that in their talks, in their messaging.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've found to be true, Krista, in this is what's heartbreaking. I'm glad we're having this conversation, because most of my white brothers and sisters, when they are engaging into those conversations, they are not even aware of the numbers and the stats that we just gave. So they're just wide open to receive all of this kind of false information and get lured into a trap that it takes 100 years to get them out of. Yeah. That's what I'm really up against when I came here to Birmingham and to preach the gospel in a way that the Lord had me to it. Because what has been happening in these poor inner cities, those 17% that are there, is that they have not been told the remedy for getting them out of the poverty that they're in. That's like when we hear people like, I didn't know marriage was a key to success in life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what you find that the nonprofits don't tell them that, or the social workers or anybody else.
Yeah.
And if you do decide to get married, that the social workers and the nonprofits is going to cut you off your aid.
But this is why you need churches, or a church that's worth its salt, should I say?
But so much of the conversation, I feel like, in poverty, and then we'll move on to like solutions. But
not yet, because I got another question. Go ahead.
But it seems like so much of the conversation, the energy around it is, let's pummel donors with talk about historic injustices, Jim Crow, and all of the grievances between the Black and white community. And that those are the real drivers of poverty. Those are the things that make people be in poverty, particularly Black people.
Jim Crow, systemic racism, redlining, slavery.
Yeah, these are the things we hear on the road over and over and over again. And we can talk about, we see it all the time when we travel. We go over the railroad tracks and we're like, oh, here was the redlining, because the houses are immediately different and the neighborhoods shift and all of that. But then, is that really the driver of poverty? Like today in why people are poor? Like, what is it that you see as the pattern of what causes poverty?
Definitely not racism, police brutality, redlining, Jim Crow. But I will say that the left, oh, I keep saying that, so please block that out.
You can say the left. That's okay. I call them the left.
Yeah, I don't like to show my, see, I like to get into camps without knowing that I'm inside the camp. And so that's where I can work best with reasoning, with truth of God's word, without basically coming in with my guns blaring. This is what I am. And so
I'm just Machine Gun Kelly over here.
But you West Coast too, so you just living up to your you guys started a trend that's now down here in my neck of the woods. I mean, we ain't know anything about no drive-bys. So so those things are really, we are Christians. We know those things were evil. They were not right. Even I'm preaching through the book of Exodus. I would say that Pharaoh had a redlining thing too. I would say he had a good school. Moses got in there because God adopted him into the school system. But not all the other Hebrews got in there. So I could just point it out in scripture. It's really real. And the Egyptians had it better than the Hebrews. And we know that story and that background. But I would say what I see has nothing to do with redlining, Jim Crow, white people's racism, none of that. Though all of those, are white people racist or black people racist? Sure. But that's not what's playing out in our inner cities. In our inner cities, it is nothing more. First and foremost, let me say this. There has been an abandonment from the church. And there has been a false gospel, and I have to be careful how I say this because I'm not throwing shade at any nonprofits, but there's been these nonprofits that are filtrated in these inner cities that are bringing nothing but what I call a benevolence kingdom. That's all they bring. And so what has happened over the last 60 years, 70 years, especially from the 60s, there's been no real concentrated gospel preaching, teaching about sin, about marriage, about family. And I think a lot of churches, black churches, white churches, just thought and think that these poor communities really was getting what I call basic tenets of the Christian faith, like marriage, sexual ethics. And then what we've seen, what has been indoctrinating the urban hip hop culture, it's been hip hop. That's why you see the way we even dress. I mean, we all know, only reason why we're still wearing Jordans, even I wear Jordans, because everybody around me is wearing them. It's just a cultural value in the urban culture to have some Jordans on. No matter if you're rich, middle class, or in between, you're supposed to have these Jordans on, and Jordan hasn't played in how many years? And so there's been a lack of family. I mean, I'm meeting people who've never been to a wedding. They're in their mid-20s, close to 30. They've never seen rings on people's finger. It's like the things that we think about here in our audience is normal for us. It's not for people who's been living in Southside Chicago for 30 years. All they see is children being born. Mm-hmm. They're just used to growing up with no dad being around, getting killed in gangbanging fights or whatever, going out to prison. It's just normalized urban pathology culture, which leads to poverty. It impacts education. It impacts businesses leaving the community because you get a lot of what I call just violence. Because when you got boys growing up in homes where there are no dads, this is where all the poverty is coming from in the inner city. And here's the thing: I know a lot of educators, and these guys are really smart. They say, well, because they got to raise money too. Well, we're going to keep trying a new trick to get these inner city kids out of what? Falling education, everything else. So we need more money. We need more money. We need more money. Everyone knows that those who are falling behind in education that can't read, let's take Alabama. A lot of our third graders cannot read at a third grade reading level. And so our governors, our legislature have made a law, you can't pass them anymore. Well, if you go to do the research, well, who are these kids that can't read at third grade? They're not Kevin and his wife. It's not kids with the mom and the dad at home, which you will find both Black, white, Hispanic, and all of the above, you will find that same common denominator. It's always a single parent homes, whether it's a single mom, single grandma, or some sort. That's where all of this concentrated poverty is coming from. And it shows up in the education. It shows up in all of the spectrums. It shows up in those who's getting murdered, those who are getting killed in our streets, those who are doing the shootings, and those who are going to prison. I mean, even the federal government tells you those who grow up without dads at home, 80-some%, they end up in our prisons. We all know it has nothing. You can't find one statistical stat that's real bona fide that will show you the reason that Black men end up in prison is because of racism.
Yeah.
It's not there. It's fatherlessness, not able to read, no support, no home life, no community. And now what you're seeing in the inner cities, no church, no God, no fear of the Lord, and all of the above. That's at the bottom line. It's where all of our poverty is stemming from here in the inner cities, especially what I see every day.
So what it sounds like you're saying is it's basically like a circular, kind of just like a loop. Like there's no fathers in the home. Well, one, there's no fear of God. The churches aren't churching right, the majority of them. No fathers in the home. There's no marriage in sight. So people don't even get a vision of what could possibly happen or be possible in their life. These things impact education. Statistically, I think that a lot of those statistics are fair when you can't read by a certain level or when you aren't doing well in school and it leads to dropout. There are higher crime rates. Then people go to jail, and that just increases the amount of poverty within the community, especially because when those men go to jail, you're taking out, another source of income. It leads to more single women raising kids. So it's like this loop that just continues to happen. And then we are, now we're having, another baby and it just keeps going. But what I hear you saying is, the drivers are, the lack of God, lack of fathers, lack of marriage. And we know these things. We know statistically.
And lack of churches. And
lack of church. Yeah, I was saying lack of God, but yeah, lack of churches. It's like if you wait and finish high school and you wait to get married until after you have finished your education, be it high school or college, and you wait to have kids until after you have done those two steps, like statistically, you will work your way out of poverty. You will not continue
100%.
in that generational line.
Yeah, the 3 steps of poverty, get you out of poverty, the steps of success. I think the Heritage Foundation calls
Success
it.
Sequence.
Yeah, success sequence is like finish high school, get a job, any job, and wait until you're married before you have kids. Don't have kids out of wedlock.
Yep.
If you do those 3 simple things, you will dramatically decrease your chances of poverty or passing on poverty to the next generation. But,
and that's across the board, no matter if you're Black, Hispanic, white, or whatever.
Yeah. But this has always been my question to Monique for many years. And with her background in working in social service, why aren't we incentivizing that through nonprofits? Like, why aren't we giving young people that messaging?
I can tell you, I mean, I run in this all the time. In many senses, addressing someone, whether they're educated or not educated, about what they do with their bodies when it comes to sexual relationships where children come, is very messy. And so I can tell you why nonprofits, whether they be Christians or not, they just don't have the stomach. I mean, just take inner city side of Chicago. Okay, let's go to the south side. You're gonna walk into that city, all those Black moms, and tell them to do what with their bodies?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See, and this is where what nonprofit executive director that's gonna walk in the South Side Detroit somewhere and tell Shaniqua You better start living right, or whatever the case may be. So first and foremost, Krista, it's a spiritual fight. This is my argument. It has to come back to the church, because if you took me outside the church, took my churchmen off of me, man, some of the rooms I've been in, I don't know if I would do this. I'm definitely not doing this. This is a nonprofit executive director. So, nah, man, give me my 250. I'm out.
Well,
I
and
invite you.
Go ahead. And as someone who has worked in nonprofit and in that whole homelessness realm and working to bring families out of homelessness and, all of that, when I write my grant, I have to, write how many families am I going to help? There's an incentive. The more families I help, the more money comes to me and not just me, but, to my organization. And we are, I do think hopefully, the heart behind the people who are working there is really to help people. But again, me as an organization helping someone and requesting $100,000-$200,000 from HUD is one thing. HUD saying, well, hold on, little Betty, if you get too much help and you start to be too independent, trust me, we are going to cut you off. And so there is no incentive to really get out of poverty in that regard. Kevin, I don't know if you wanted to jump in real quick before we go to break.
Go ahead, Kevin. Yeah.
I mean, everything y'all said is spot on. I'm just sitting here. I know Alton kind of brought it up. He didn't want to say it, but the church's failure since the 60s.
Let me get my tea.
and all of a sudden, you got all these nonprofits in here. How did that come about? And the church gave up its true mission. The church stopped preaching about living righteously and holiness and discipling people in the community and telling people about Jesus and the gospel, and became more about political activism and what the government can do for us. Right. I have said many times that the civil rights movement taught the Black community and the Black church that our power came through our grievance. And so we have spent the last 60 years ensuring we don't lose that grievance, which is why we highlight the problems of the inner city poor, because we're trying to leverage that for resources and money and power. And so there is no incentive to actually solve the problem, because no one wants to really solve the problem, right? They just don't.
Except for Jesus, people.
But if they did, they would be out there talking about family, right? They would be out there holding young men accountable for the babies they're making. If they did, they wouldn't be putting single mothers on pedestals. They'd be putting married women on pedestals, but we do the exact opposite. And so that's really what it is. But you can't like Alton said, it's messy, and you can't come in and say that, because people are going to get in their feelings. No one wants to hear that. They're going to get mad. And people don't like the truth, but that's just the truth. And it's just not enough churches in these communities to say that and to do that work.
And that sounds like what you guys are describing is a different sort of structural problem. I mean, there's so much conversation these days about, well, the way to fix poverty is we got to fix systems and structures. What you're saying is, well, the first thing we got to do is fix the way you think. And that's a whole different structure and system. And that if we build systems around rewarding, maybe that's not the best word, but incentivizing or paying money through nonprofits, in ways that aren't consistent with, let's not abort our children. Let's keep our children. Let's get married. Let's figure out how to have work strategies. I mean, these are more long-term solutions. It's not as easy as like just going through a drive-through food pantry that, maybe might solve a temporary problem, but it won't bring a lasting systemic change.
Yeah. I'll say this. So there's a couple of things going on. Number one is the political left. You talked about systems. They view all issues and problems in life through systems, right? And so they don't view it through individual actions, because to them, the individual action is only done so because of the system. The system is the driver. And so they focus so much on the system, they don't focus anything on individual responsibility or accountability. And so, and then once again, you the way you get money is you talk about the system, because if you're going to fix the problem, if you're a politician, you're a mayor, or you're a city council member, or even if you run a nonprofit, the way that you get your funding is through bringing up the problem in a way in which you can solve it, right? If the onus is on the people to change, how do you raise money around that?
Free will
right?
decisions are a lot harder to fund.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And
Yes.
so you have to make the problem in a way that shows how you can change it through these actions, right? And that's what they're hooked on doing, and it just continues the cycle of nothing changing.
I got to take a break, and then
Yeah.
we'll come back and hear.
And we're going to talk about some solutions.
Yeah, Alton's
right.
ideas and solutions. But I do want to let everyone know, if you're enjoying this conversation, this is just sort of a preview of coming attractions of what's coming up at our fall conference at Alton Hardy's Church in Fairfield, Alabama. We would love to have you there as we talk about justice. Here's my friend Kevin Briggins with more of that.
The world is hurting. Poverty, division, injustice, and despair surround us. But there's hope. God's word offers timeless solutions for justice and healing. Join us on October 23rd through the 25th in Fairfield, Alabama for the Biblical Views on Justice and Society Conference. This transformative 3-day event explores how Scripture addresses today's challenges with clarity and compassion. Hear from thought leaders like Monique Kevin Briggins, Alton Hardy, and Krista Bontrager as they unpack biblical principles for justice and practical steps for your community. Together, let's discover God's plan.
To sign up for our conference coming this October, go to centerforbiblicalunity.com/conference. For more information, we are looking forward to having more of these discussions in person and to be able to meet all of you in person. So we need to get to the solutions part of it as we wrap. But the question I have is, growing up in South Central, especially my elementary years, junior high, I learned a lot about the poor and why people were in poverty. But what I never learned was that white people could be poor too. There are about 15 million Caucasians, white people, those of European descent, who are in poverty. I
remember the first time we talked about that.
I don't want to talk about that. We ain't got time. We got to stay the course.
You were like, what?
But we don't talk about the fact that, white people are poor too. And so I remember one of the first times I went to Tennessee, we drove through an area that was deeply impoverished. And I was like, this don't feel safe. But they was white. And so it kind of I was having some cognitive dissonance. I was, what's going on right now? But that's something that I think does a disservice to those who may not be Black or brown, but are also struggling, and they may be struggling for real legit reasons. But we also don't talk about, how do we bring the conversation of marriage and family and church and all of that to those communities, because a lot, like you're saying, Pastor Alton, the issues are the same. It's the same. Poverty has its own set of issues, and those things aren't seen this is Black poverty, this is white poverty. They can at times show up more looking like, gangs look different and drug rates look different and things like that. But the root causes, when you scrape all that stuff away, they're shared.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So how do white people get poor? Sorry.
Same way Black people
the same way
poor
Black people get poor.
J.D. Vance, I mean, his book,
His
Vice
book, Hillbilly
President.
Elegy, is a
I
good
mean, he
look
explains
into that.
same dynamics.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that book because it exposed the very thing, Monique, that you were just talking about, that you got all these poor white people. And I've only had one or two, maybe in my tenure as a pastor, white pastors who will be willing to go among his own people like that and to bring some of the same things I'm trying to do with people of my flesh that looks like me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I mean, we've been hijacked as a country with a leftist Marxist agenda that's in this oppressor. And the best way to do that and to sell that card is to use the black and white dynamic and the narrative. And so that's why you don't hear people talking about white poverty or even Indian poverty. It's always at almost every conference, even when I used to go back in the day, the CCDA with Dr. John Perkins. And there were a few people who tried to engage that conversation outside the black and white conversation, but it was very difficult because it would always come back to slavery, come back to Jim Crow. And so Satan has been able to use those incidents of our history to somehow to keep a whole nation just focusing in on black poverty and nobody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part, and there's just a lot of money into that. But for me, you know, I went among African Americans because two reasons. Main reason I was called to it. I come out of what you call poverty. But the second reason was what I realized, I saw the shenanigans. I saw the bootlegging. I saw what I call the false gospels in these communities that was not bringing about a true freedom. And I knew that the only freedom that these inner city urban blacks were going to be able to get out of this poverty, they had to engage what I call biblical truth.
Mm.
Therefore, I mean, discipleship is basically this, helping people to come out of a practical, come out of a daily, wake up in the morning, I'm just going to sin just because.
Mm-hmm.
Discipleship is getting people to come out of that and start to live their lives into the obedience of a God who will judge them on the day of judgment. That's a serious message that I think a lot of poor people in our inner cities, they have never heard that message. Oh, I'm going to be judged? Sure you are.
Mm-hmm.
But they've been told only white people are going to be judged. I don't know who told you.
Yeah, a big part of your strategy, I guess we should make it very clear, is that your first step when you arrived in Fairfield was plant a church. And you planted the church in the middle of downtown Fairfield. And honestly, when Monique and I first met you, I think it was back in 2021, we drove there. And as we're driving up, most of the buildings were boarded up. Yeah. And the city hall is right across the street from your church. And your church is like just right there in downtown. And I'm thinking, what in the world is this? Because there was just felt like there was no vitality in that downtown area. I don't know what we're doing. But your first step was, all right, we have to have a faithful gospel preaching, bold anchor before we start the ministry. So your first thing wasn't, I'm going to open up a social service center. Your first priority was, I'm going to open up a church and I'm going to start discipling men. I'm going to, you know, and since then, as it's evolved, you know, we mentioned you have a grocery store, you have a pharmacy, but you also have a men's discipleship program. Mm-hmm. And you thought, okay, we're going to start a church. We're going to start discipling people, and we're going to encourage people to get married and help them develop a plan for their lives. So talk a little bit about why you started with the men, like, and you have a whole mentoring program for them where they live there by the church and hang out with you and the leadership team.
Great question. I mean, the Bible. And I say that God started the family we know with a man, and you follow that all the way through to the book of Revelation. You just see God just using men. And when you look at these urban communities, the people that you don't see in homes, and I'm thinking long term, like how do we bring transformation to this community? And I knew instinctively and just intuitively that men were the key, because we all know this. We know the research. We know when there's fathers, when there's husbands married to moms, things just go a better way. We've already talked about the success sequence. And so I started with young Black men because I knew first and foremost that was going to be the most difficult task. That's where typically all the homicides, that's where you just in and out of prison. All of the pathologies you want to name is pretty much coming out of that particular species in the urban community. So I wanted to start with men. And then I knew that was going to be more difficult because they have to make a decision to get married. Most of the women in our inner cities, they want to get married, but they can't make a guy marry them. So guys are stubborn. They're stiff-necked. They're hard-headed. They don't want to get married. Why would I want to get married, Pastor Hardy? I got the Hebrew Israelite telling me I can have 100 wives. I can just, this is the best man's world for me. I can make a song for that. In fact, I can make a rap song for it. And that's pretty much what you have coming at me. So I knew that the men were going to be a catalyst for long-term transformational change. And so that's where I started. Second thing I did, I would not work with men who refused to work.
Amen.
If they did not want to work, I was not going to disciple them. After the first 2-3 times of meeting, if they didn't want to work, discipleship stopped. I usually would tell them, so you're a son of the devil. I said, well, why are you calling me the devil? I said, well, because you don't want to work. That's the first thing God gave a man. And I would take him to the book of Genesis. If you don't want to work, man, you less than a human being. And then the third thing I did, I addressed the sexual ethics, because a lot of these guys were involved what you call just all of the things that God told the Hebrews when they came out of Egypt not to engage in. So I addressed who Jesus was, marriage and family, work ethic, and their sexual ethics. I just addressed those things. And I promoted marriage in a biblical sense. I don't make them get married, but I'm pretty aggressive with it, because I believe the lack of marriage in our urban communities is part of the problem. So I promoted that. And I just went in on that. I did all that I knew to do to try to help these guys get jobs. I try to alleviate any kind of impediments that they had on their record, driver's license issues. And this is where the word and deed kind of work together. So if a guy was willing to work with me, I brought in all of my deeds, ministries to try to take off any impediments that he may have had on his name, so that he could be able to work, get to a job. If that's meaning helping them get a car, helping them get a license. Another thing that I did, I would never give them anything for free. They had to always have skin in the game, because what's been happening in these urban communities, and goes back to the nonprofits, most of them are pretty much are just offering another form of big welfare.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. 100%.
Alternate ministry.
100%.
And I'm telling you, Krista, that hinders the work in inner cities more than anything. And they expect that from Christian organizations. Well, you just give me something for free. Give me something for free. And they never have to have any skin in the game. And this is why you keep perpetuating this kind of long-term poverty. So those are the things we worked on. And by the grace of God, Krista, and I say this to people that are listening in, this did not happen overnight.
That's the thing, is you're going for a long-term, you're playing the long game here.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of free will involved, where people might walk with you a while and then they might opt out, and you don't have any control over that. And you're saying that's fine, you're free to make that decision, but we won't walk together anymore. But at the same time, what's coming to me is, since I'm the only white person here, is I'm thinking of all
it's
of
okay, girl, we love you. You are, sister.
But
hold on, Krista's white?
I couldn't see
I know
that.
you're all
I don't know.
but I'm thinking about a lot of well-meaning white people who donate money to ministries, nonprofits that really mean well. But what I'm hearing you say is maybe we need to be more discerning about, hey, is this nonprofit really trying to help people with short-term versus long-term solutions? And I don't think that that's a question that a lot of well-meaning donors often ask.
Yeah.
They're not being told to ask that. Go ahead, Kevin.
No, I was going to give a real life situation. You're talking about how, the way they give things for free. And so when I was in inner city ministry, we were trying to start a food pantry co-op, right? Because you say we want to have skin in the game, right? And so we was going to start this thing where they had skin in the game. They had to work in the pantry, they had to donate.
That never works.
To
I
it,
tried that.
right?
Go ahead.
But this is the thing. So we reached out to a large local food bank. Like, this is a major food bank, right? And we said, hey, will you all fund or, give us food for this program, right? This is what we want to do. And they said, we love the idea. We love what you guys are trying to do, but we can't give this food to anything. It has to be free.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be free.
Yes.
And I'm like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the food had to be free. They couldn't give it to us if we were going to make the people actually
work,
have some skin in the game and earn it. And so that's what it's like, these roadblocks of trying to develop people in the right way, because the nonprofit system is just so jacked up.
Yes.
So that's not every nonprofit. So yes, if they are getting things, especially from the government and that food money, if they are buying that food specifically with funds that come from like USDA or, whatever. Yes, I cannot ask someone to put in any type of work to be able to receive that. That is all meant to be given. If I ask you to work or to do anything that feels like work, then
like unload the trucks.
That's crazy.
Yeah, then your grant can be lost. So I worked under a program where it was like that, but I've also worked in under a different program where all of the food was received through private donation. So donors from like Kroger but it was all privately given. What I ran into in saying, you know what, we really, and I was new in this. I was like, surely people will want to work for their things. But what I found was that people would stop coming. They'd be like, I'm not going to work for that. Like, so
they would just go to
a different food pantry where there was no idea of no thought of requirement. So eventually it didn't work and it fizzled out, and we just ended up giving things away for free. Because if they don't want to work, they don't want to work. That idea of you don't work, you don't eat, not in a lot of nonprofits.
Yeah. I mean, this is Urban Hope's vision, is leading the people out of Egypt to the promised land of freedom. When God first gave it to me, I didn't know how transformative that vision would be, because I didn't. And so as we talk about Marxist leftist ideology, if I am a Marxist, I mean, you guys study this stuff, what role would he take? To have people work for their jobs, to work for their keep, or to have them not work, and to get it from who? To get it from the government. And it's been working itself out in our inner cities. So this is why I go in on this ideal of discipleship, of dealing with work. We have to literally do massive teachings on the kingdom of work, because these communities have been inundated for generations on welfare. I mean, I'm not the most best biblical scholar there is, but when God showed me the text in Numbers chapter 11, and when the children of Israel kept moaning and groaning, wanting to go back to Egypt, in verse 4 and 5, and they said, oh, that we had meat to eat in Egypt that cost us nothing. Man, I must have jumped out of my body and went to heaven. I said, that's the inner city. They said, we want to go back to Pharaoh, who was killing our children, who had us in bondage for all these years. but we were ready to go back to that kind of slavery because Pharaoh would give us everything we needed for free it didn't cost us anything. I didn't make that up.
Yeah.
That's what we encounter. And now, and Monique, you talk about these governments. When people say, well, I always ask people, so who do you think it is that's always trying to lead the people back to Egypt? And people look at me. I said, take a good guess. They're right in front of you. They come around every 4 years. Politicians, government. This is why one time I was in a meeting. I was meeting with a young lady. She got married, and she called me from the HUD office, and she said, Pastor Hardy, I'm sitting here in the HUD, and the lady's telling me not to get married to the father of my children. And she said that would not be a good idea because I won't be able to get any help.
That's crazy.
So
that's so messed up.
I said, hold on, see here, something's going on with my thing. Sorry. And I said to the lady, I said, hey, could you just walk outside? You know, I'm trying to be slick. She said, walk outside. I said, you outside? She said, yeah, run to your car.
But I feel like my heart does feel for people in that situation, because what our government doesn't do, they're quick to sign you up, quick to get you on board with the government assistance, but they penalize you if you want to get off. You know, they penalize you if you say, well, I'm going to get married. I want to raise my kids. I want to work. They cut you off with the quickness.
Yep.
And that just sends people down into even deeper poverty. And, you know, which is one of the reasons why I personally think, like, hey, when you have ministries who can walk alongside couples, y'all know, like, look, I know you get food stamps. I know you on WIC. I know you get Section 8.
But so you're saying the government isn't helping, like, and so many of these, even church programs are dependent on the government.
Everybody's dependent on the government, the church program, like everybody.
Yep.
Everybody is
sounds like a class that y'all to teach.
Right? But I'm like, you know what? Like, okay, we do want people to move away from the government. So how do we do that well? How do we say, you know what? No, this isn't the best way. Look, we're going to take it step by step. And even step by step, they're going to get cut off real quick. But how can we step in? Don't give them stuff for free, but at least come and, do you know how to make a budget? Do you know how to open up a savings account? Do you know what a high yield savings account is? Let's get you a high yield savings account. Let's help people in that position, because that was my life growing up. I thought that when I turned 18, I was going to get my Section 8 so I could move out my mama house.
Yeah.
But nobody taught me budgeting. Our moderator on the chat, when I came back from South Africa, Laura Hartley is the one who sat me down and was like, honey, like, we gonna have to get you into it. Let's teach you how to really budget. And praise God, because honey, yes, we bless Jesus. But there is
the shoe budget.
There's a missing link. So people are very afraid. And I'm glad that, you know, the woman called you to be like, what do I do? But I think there are so many people in that position who don't want to be married to the government, but they have no one to call to say, what do I do?
What goes back to what we said before, Monique, this is the failure of the church in these communities. And even for the churches that try to come into these communities, really not understanding the power of discipleship. Basically, what you just described with your own life. I mean, you was a pretty sharp girl, educated, and you still, in your own mind, if God didn't intervene with this lady helping you with a budget, budgeting is discipleship. All of life is discipleship. What we've done with some part of our church mindset, that discipleship is only when you're talking about the Bible. No, all of life is discipleship. How to get up in the morning and go to a job, to set your alarm clock at this time, go to bed. I have to teach young men and women all aspects of life, especially for those in the urban environment, which they have not seen a husband, a mom, a healthy mom and dad, and all of the above, how to go to work on time, how to work at work, how to handle your confrontations, how to have good friendships. Man, we teach all aspects of discipleship. People are always asking me, I mean, you're just going to have to be willing to give your life away. And because they're not just going to walk out of a generational cycle of bondage where their mom, their grandmom, and everybody around them has been involved in for years. That takes time and it takes effort. And so I would say it's the failure of the church. People ask me all the time, and I end here. Probably my biggest frustration. People want, and this is, I don't know if this is a Christian thing, and this is why I named my book Longest Away. What is it about Christians in our modern age? We want everything overnight. It's like there's no more of a process of discipleship, of just walking with people and even just trusting people over time. Nobody gets transformed in 2 days. But what we want is we want a quick fix. We want a short summer program or whatever that is. And somehow that's going to change and transform the depths of sexual abuse and brokenness and absentee fathers, lack of nurturing for moms and grandmoms. We're going to change all of that with a summer program?
Yeah.
Go ahead and
You
speak.
got to be kidding me.
Go ahead and speak.
You got to be kidding me. I've never seen a dad. Do people understand the impact? Y'all had that one guy on. I mean, Adam B. Coleman. Man, I showed that talk that y'all had to our church. People was in tears. Man, you know the impact of fatherlessness, the emotional, psychological, mental turmoil that has on people's psyches, boys and girls. And you're going to transform these urban poor communities with a summer program.
Yeah.
Or 2 weeks this or that, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And that's been my biggest pet peeve with the church. Man, you can't do this like this. You got to set up camp. You got to be willing to give your life away as Jesus told us to do so, and just allow the process to be what it is. But Monique, we do that when we go overseas, but somehow when it comes to what we're doing indigenously, it's been lost on us. It's all overnight. Can I give a turkey giveaway? I mean, we get dumped with a bunch of turkeys that nobody really eats.
Turkey dry.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's back to what Jesus said. He said, go make disciples, teaching them to observe all things. Learning how to spend your money is a part of that all things Jesus commanded.
Yeah.
Learning how not to be in debt, and learning how to be a giver, learning how to do that. That's discipleship. Learning how to be committed to one person when you have never seen somebody in your family ever be committed to one person. You know what the biggest challenge we have? This is going to blow y'all mind. What do you guys think? I think I may have told you this before. What do you guys think is the biggest impediment and challenge that we have with our young men and trying to get them married? Who do you think is the most opposition to our young men getting married? Who you guys think it is?
Their mothers or
that's where I was gonna go.
Yeah, it's either the mothers. Yeah.
Yep.
Why do you think it is?
Because they don't want to lose their baby boy, or they don't like the girl.
We call them husband sons.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of money involved.
Yeah. But it's also because their mama ain't married and they need the son to take care of them. Where's she gonna go? Shady Pines?
Poverty begets poverty.
Yeah.
And this goes back to, you say, why is this so important that we do this work through a local church? Because, as I said early on, there's a whole nother level of messiness. I have to walk these young men, doing it right now as we speak, through how to walk as an adult with their moms who are pushing up against them about even the idea of getting married.
Yeah. Oh. Yes.
Never really thought about that.
Krista, my white donors, they say, man, we don't have, they say, Pastor, we don't have a framework for this. I say, I know you don't.
Yeah. No. but that also can't be no excuse. Like we need, and this is the thing. We are the body of Christ. We are brothers and sisters. We are family. And so it can't just be, well, that's the issues over there with my black brother, my black family. No, and we all got that family where we like, I don't really feel like going and dealing with they mess over there and all that drama, but we still family. And so how do we have that conversation of like, look, we need to get in and wrestle with this together?
Well, I'm going to do the wrap because Pastor Alton's got a sermon to finish up. Monique's got to go. And we could keep chopping it up here for a long time. But this has been great. We do want to encourage everyone to check out our conference that's coming next month in Fairfield, Alabama, at Pastor Alton's church.
October 23rd.
October 23rd to 25th. Going to be an amazing time. If you're interested in these kinds of conversations, you need to be there. You need to get your pastor there. Tell him about the conference. This is going to be justice in a way that you don't hear every day. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a biblically focused, truly biblically based discussion. It's not going to be warmed over neo-Marxism, and Alton will be providing a lot of more boots on the ground types of information based on his 30 years of working in impoverished communities.
I also want to encourage you to check out Alton's book. I think we're going to put it up on the screen. Long is the Way. Yep. Great read. Check it out. And just go and support Alton. And then also go and check out Alton. I don't have your website.
It was on the screen, Manifold.
Okay, it is.
Yeah. And I've got a link to it in the description.
Yeah.
People.
Check out the work, because this isn't just the theory of justice. This isn't the theory of helping the poor. This is what is it to me, have boots on the ground and actually do the work. Yeah. It's a lot of work. And I think that's why people would rather engage with the theory than actually the praxis of it.
Because this is hard. This is the hard way. So thanks, brothers. I'm looking forward to seeing you next month. This has been fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you.
Yes.
I got to deal with Kevin.
Y'all good, man, when y'all here, man. All right. Take care.
All right. Good night, my friends.
Good night. Thanks for watching. Bye.
God bless.